let's all give a round of applause to Mimi Kennedy.
Oh, Tyler, thank you. What you don't know is Tyler is a very big name in the next book I'm writing, fiction. But when my husband heard, "Are we going upstairs to Tyler?" He looked at me like, "My God, what is going on?" Thank you, and Karen Olson for everything you've done. I wanted to be here a year ago. I bought tickets in November when she asked me to do this a year ago, September. And then I had to cash in my tickets because I was a year ahead of time. That's how excited I was to come to Rochester. Everybody in this room knows, several of you, I've looked at you like, tell me, I said after 50 years, you have to tell me again. I know you, but it's been 50 years. What are we looking like? And I have been looking forward to this like you can't believe. And it's like a near-death experience. You go down the tunnel and all your neighbors and friends are there to welcome you. That's how this feels. And I'm really good. Mark Boylan, your cousin John Boylan, who is a rock and roll legend, is a producer and Linda Ronstadt's manager. He called me about 2 years ago and said, "Hey, it's COVID, we're not working. Why don't we record your Taken to the Stage memoir from 1996? I have a recording studio. Let's do it. I've just done Linda's memoir with an actress. I think you're a much better actress than the person we have used. So let's do you." And we had a ball recording this. And then he went, "Well, let's put it out in paperback. I mean, it's really not available anymore." So he made me write a foreword. And that's why basically I'm here. The Boylan family. And Mildred Boylan was my mother's best friend, and Nancy Lee, the other of that trio, is sitting here, and I'm so happy to see you, Nancy. All right. I may go on too long, at which point, somebody can just yell, "Stop! We don't ask questions." But I thought what I would do is talk about the community theater, which is chapter 5 of this memoir, which is a psychological spiritual formation memoir, and what I used to say, a cautionary tale. Rochester Community Players was and is the second oldest community theater, I say here, in the country. Errata must be corrected. New York State, but who's going to quibble? Aunt Fran, that is my great aunt, trod, and the one who helped start RCP, with Mary Finucane, trod its boards after marriage and motherhood retired her from professional trouping. Cousin Ines Quinn played there in the 40s, supplementing her local radio singing career. Even Daddy, my father, Daniel G. Kennedy, an attorney at law at Nixon Hargrave Devinson Day, as it was known then. Even Daddy had done a turn before withdrawing to preserve his credibility at the bar, fearing some judge or juror who'd seen him play act on Saturday night might doubt the unimpeachable sincerity of his rhetoric in court on Monday morning. But Mother was our community theater star. She acted mostly in comedies at the Community Players. They suited her style, intelligence, and grace, but more importantly, they were directed by Harriet Warren, and Mother was Harriet's favorite actress. Harriet ran the theater during its mid-century heyday with her husband, George. They were a bohemian couple, though it's possible the Warrens seemed more bohemian to me than they actually were. In those days, Rochester was so conservative that a local columnist dubbed it Smugtown, USA, in his published social history of the place, and Smugtowners never forgave him. Harriet was one of the most beautiful women I'd ever seen, with an unapologetically lined face and gray blonde hair worn in a ponytail and bangs, as if Harriet had never heard of the unwritten local law that women of a certain age must acquire a salon hairdo. Beneath her soft sweaters and men's shirts, Harriet's front seemed to sag more than other women's. When I asked my mother, this would be at age 12, why, she replied with faint disapproval that couldn't quite mask her grudging admiration, "Harriet doesn't always wear a bra." This shocked me. At the time, bras were sold in store departments called foundations and were not optional. They deserved architectural nomenclature. They held female flesh so firmly in place that most women's breasts looked like ready to launch missiles. Now, this is Harriet. Nancy, dear, Harriet would say to my mother, pouring soft honey all over words we Rochesterians whistled with piercing sibilance. I'm thinking of doing a play, but I simply won't do it without you. In my Catholic neighborhood, smart, lively women functioned brilliantly and heroically in their homes, but were often too burdened to join the public discourse. And we're talking the 1950s. Our world suffered for it, and so did the women. I remember hearing about hysterectomies, mastectomies, and deaths from cancer. The news passed in whispers at church or school. I realize now how many of those lives were succored by addictions, large or small, cigarettes and alcohol for the rebels, and food and religion for the more devout. I remember how my acting ambition was greeted by some neighborhood mothers with sighs and statements like, "Oh, you're lucky to be artistic." They seemed to think certain gifts and opportunities were beyond their reach, or even their children's. Joyce Carol Oates, a writer who knows upstate New York well, once posited that all people are artists who get turned into consumers. The power to choose and the opportunities to enjoy themselves, denied women in so many critical areas of their lives, were lavishly available to them as consumers. Stores were the places where I saw most married women making decisions outside the home when I was young. Harriet Warren, functioning in her theater as artist, rebel, wife, and manager, dared to suggest that women could banish a few sacred cows without burning down the whole damn barn. Her marriage to George lasted till death did them part. Meanwhile, more conventional unions in my parents' circle of acquaintances foundered and wrecked on some of the very rocks George and Harriet's seasonal bill of comedies and dramas tried to warn people about. Yet they wrangled so fractiously at the theater that I, as a child, found it impossible to imagine how George and Harriet had ever fallen in love, much less how they stayed there. I'm sure my husband is laughing at this part. George was handsome, but short, which may have curtailed his fondest professional hopes and made him cocky. I found this terribly attractive. He was also profane. He was the first person, again, age 12 or even younger at the children's classes, I ever heard say bullshit, using the word variously as noun, adjective, and expletive. I have since learned it is an actor's favorite, useful for pairing odious obfuscation for both artistic work and business deals. I myself adopted it enthusiastically as a young actress. Bert Dempster, my teacher, identified most socially conditioned middle-class behaviors as fulsome cow dung smothering the flowers of his students' true feelings. I heartily agreed and dropped my convent school debutante manic bullshit to become a New York actor, proudly spontaneous and scatological. Then I arrived in Los Angeles, where people blanched when I swore. In the town where image is everything, women can act dirty, but we're expected to talk clean. After censoring my vocabulary in Hollywood for years until I ended up sounding like Donna Reed, I find the memory of George Warren swearing in Smugtown goddamn fucking liberating. Okay. I want to, yes, this is my cultural, my social commentary. The theater was perhaps, Rochester Community Theater, the most democratic institution I knew in my childhood. Only de facto segregation, which would finally explode Rochester in 1964 race riots, I'd call it an uprising now, prevented the players from seeming entirely inclusive, but it did draw more different kinds of people than any Rochester venue I visited. As producers, the Warrens cannily garnished stronger fare like Come Back Little Sheba or plays by that pinko Arthur Miller with warmed over Broadway comedies and genre chestnuts like Agatha Christie's Spider's Web. That's the one in which I appeared at age 12. This, along with community theater's basic draw of presenting familiar, everyday people in unfamiliar settings, your dentist as murderer, although that might not have seemed so unfamiliar. The postman as a romantic lead attracted eager audiences. And here we go, me. Aha. It's pleasure and play that drive actors. People think it's egotism, but our egos are so cruelly battered by careers that no actor could sustain one on the rewards to pride alone. Play and pleasure are balm to our wounded egos. Without them, we die. At age 12, I found pleasure and play galore in Spider's Web. This was show business and high art as well, because Agatha Christie's dialogue demanded a British accent. Spider's Web sounded ludicrous in upstate New York ease. We had a real Englishwoman in the cast, Beryl Brown, whose oval vowels and clipped consonants provided a ballast. By opening night, Spider's Web sounded at least as credible as one of those Hollywood Bible movies in which American film stars spouted, "Ersatz British to blend in with a classically trained international cast, all speaking an English no one in the Bible ever spoke anyway." Memorization came easily to me, so my work as Pippa, besides developing my dialect, lay in planning how to say each of my lines. I concentrated on how because I didn't always know why. Most child actors struggle with an information deficit. Adult characters' motivation is inscrutable to them. I think the plot of Spider's Web included sleeping around, from which both Pippa and I, the preteen playing her, were sheltered. Consequently, I odd every night on stage to a murder solution that completely evaded me. As Pippa, all I knew was that I discovered the dead body, and my play mother, Gisela Fritching, a Rochester Community Players person and wonderful teacher, became increasingly distant. These two upsets guided me as Pippa to my emotional peak, a suicide threat, which I made to my mother. I don't remember why, but I remember how. I walked downstage, wrists extended, fists clenched, veins up, and bleated, "I shall slit my wrists and kill myself." I like to think I was good as Pippa, but an extant publicity photo worries me. It shows me with my stage mother, Gisela Fritching, sitting hand to mouth as she looks on in horror. I was supposed to be gasping in fright, but in fact, I appear to be either yawning or snacking, which makes Gisela's look inexplicable unless she knows I'm about to eat poison. Child actors, their minds uncluttered by daily anxieties that plague grown-ups, and we easily memorize whole scenes, whole plays to which we're exposed in rehearsal. My comprehensive knowledge of our script made me think I could be of assistance to actors who struggled through off-book rehearsals. I hated to see them call line to the house, mired in agitation and defeat. Seeking to spare them, I took to hissing cross stage, opening words to lines so slow in coming I was sure they'd been forgotten. I was rewarded not with the grateful smiles I'd anticipated, but pained looks and curt nods. Harriet took me urgently aside. You mustn't prompt the grown-ups, darling. Sometimes they're acting in those pauses. Acting in the pauses? What an interesting idea. Harriet spoke to me so rarely in private that her gentle reproof was all I needed to shut me up. In the pauses, a garden of behaviors bloomed that previously I'd quashed. I watched amazed as breasts heaved, trebling hands lit and extinguished cigarettes. Glances were met and quickly avoided. Half the play was in the pauses. I was so glad Harriet had alerted me. Her constant refrain, pick up your cues, gathered urgency as opening night approached, suggesting she had limited tolerance for this practice of acting in the pauses. But I was charmed and resolved to try it myself when I was older and more experienced. And finally, the cast party. This is comment on Rochester. It's my last bit for you. The Spider's Web cast party was held in a home that announced the moment I entered that the Irish Catholic Republican norms by which I lived were mere cultural preferences, which the good theater folk of Smugtown did not universally embrace. There were wall hangings. In my home, I knew fabrics were employed as drapery, upholstery, carpet, or bedding, as if my people feared that idle textiles like idle hands were the devil's workshop. These exotic, ropey things were somehow suspect. They were matched by other signs of hedonistic excess. A long looped shag carpet caught women's high heels and encouraged their owners to shuck their shoes and stand talking to companions while absently rubbing one stocking foot against another. The living room was sunken, approached by 3 descending shag-carpeted stairs. Around its circumference ran a circular couch where people had flung themselves expansively or were huddled intimately with one another, wriggling unshod toes into the cushion cracks. At the center of the room stood a fireplace with a flue shaped like the Tin Man's hat. The funnel rose into the ceiling and disappeared. I sat on the flagstone apron of this monument, next to some trays of hors d'oeuvres that weren't the Triscuits and cheddar or even party rye and Swiss that I was used to. These were rolled and folded things, skewered on toothpicks and simmering in sauces. I tasted, and they were good. Adults approached me occasionally to compliment my performance. When they turned away for more lively conversation with their peers, I didn't mind. Theater people were as fascinating to watch off stage as they were on. I watched. More people took to the couch, lounging there until it took on the appearance of a public bed from which the party buzz rose like helium. I saw nothing overtly naughty, like the makeout scene in 7th grade that Charles Nowicki's sister had staged with her hoodie boyfriend while they were supposed to be chaperoning our dance party. But after I'd eaten my fill of Swedish meatballs and shrimp rumaki, my mother led me away.
Mimi.
Yeah.
It's wonderful to see you.
I know.
Yes, and I'd like to add my voice to the chorus of thank yous to you and Larry for making the long and arduous journey to help celebrate this wonderful occasion.
Yes.
So, since you started talking about the community players, that's where I'll lead off.
Alrighty.
You were in a couple. This is the beginning of your career, and you had experiences, you met people, you worked with people. I know it was a long time ago, but did any of that have any impact on your career? Did you take away anything that was helpful or maybe not helpful? Depends.
Yeah, well, oh God, I learned by experience, as you've heard. I just make all kinds of errors, and I've often said, I can't believe I got as far as I have in life with what I didn't know. It's just complete ignorance, lamb to the slaughter, and somehow made my way, for which I'm grateful to everyone who helped me. But Robert Forster, when I was acting with your parents on stage in Take Her, She's Mine, I'm now a sophomore, 15, in high school, he watched us rehearse a scene. And Harriet introduced, this is Robert Forster, Mimi. And I hadn't seen him in Come Blow Your Horn on Broadway. I didn't know anything about movies he might have been in. They were probably B on the Catholic movie list, so I couldn't go see them. But he's took me to the side of the stage and I leaned down and I'm like, oh, a real actor's talking to me anyway. In that scene, you're playing it very angry to your parents. And he said, it's good. He said, but I think you can explore further. I think you're more hurt than angry. Your parents have been ignoring you because they're concentrated on the sister going away to college. Next time, try to think about your hurt, telling your parents that you feel hurt by them. And I did make that adjustment because I listened to anybody when I was little, and I still do. What am I doing wrong? I'll change it. But that stuck with me. You can adjust your performance. You should dig deeper. Anger really is the easy thing to get to for most actors at first. James Gandolfini has some interesting things to talk about when he plays Tony Soprano, how angry he had to get. And he ended up hating to have to do that because it went so deep for him. But the early anger that actors do is usually just a go away, don't look at me. It's tension. It's tension. So Bob Forster, I took that away, and your parents were so kind to me and full of praise. And my mother, after Pippa, she came to the green room and she went, you really listen on stage. And I said, what kind of backhanded compliment is that? I can hear, duh. But I was listening to see if everybody remembered their lines.
That was actually probably a 2-week period where you and I actually had the same parents.
Yes. And I'm so glad we did.
Yeah, that's a great story. Speaking of that, our early years growing up together, we spent summers on Canandaigua
Yes,
Lake.
we did.
And I remember thinking of you as sort of an older sister.
Oh, thank you.
A very colorful older sister.
Yeah, that's right.
And very, very funny. And
Yeah.
which is going to take me to into your career, where I think it was 1975 was the year that was going to start a sketch comedy show on television. They were premiering it. And I think you came within a hair's breadth of being part of it. And I'm talking about Saturday Night Live. What was the story behind that?
Yeah, 1 a.m, Lauren called me and said, you're so funny. And if you stay in New York, I know I'm going to use you. We're going to do these commercials. We're going to film little videos. But I'm not going to mention the man's name. He was a bête noir for much of my life, but he has not had a happy life. And I must leave him to that. But he said, we don't have a piece of white bread yet in this cast. We already have Lorraine and Gilda. We need a piece of white bread. It's going to be Jane Curtin. And he called me at 1 a.m. because I was on the National Lampoon tour with my husband, Larry, going around all the colleges in New York State and some in New Jersey with an absolutely horrible sketch National Lampoon show. It was scatological, it was irreverent. Somebody shut it down, one of the places that we were. My mother came to see it with Peggy Sagerson. Anybody remember Peggy Sagerson? She had 8 kids and she was the wife of a doctor. Nothing could shock Peggy Sagerson. And my mother said, Peggy, you got to come to this thing with me. And I'm so glad Peggy was there with my mother because she made her laugh all the way through it. There was, I won't go into it, but I was due to go back out on that tour when Jim Steinman, who wrote the Meatloaf albums and is kind of a rock god, God rest his soul. He's passed in the last 2 years. He was one of my husband's best friends in Hewlett, Long Island, through Amherst College. And Jim Steinman was playing the piano for the National Lampoon Tour because we had all admired the National Lampoon Tour with Chevy Chase, Chris Guest, John Belushi, Bill Murray, Gilda Radner. We had been to see them. We knew them in New York. And then so we all got cast in the touring company of it with Meatloaf. So Meatloaf was asked to audition for Saturday Night Live because they thought this big guy would be a good John Belushi. I mean, he was the John Belushi replacement on our tour, and Meatloaf wanted to be on Saturday Night Live singing or something on the debut show. It was then just called Saturday Night. And so it was a room like this with people and desks. Chevy was there, and Lorraine has since told me she and Gilda were there, but I had never seen them, so I didn't know who they were. I mean, I hadn't seen them on the show. I had seen Gilda on stage, but I hadn't known she was there. And Beats. And we walked in, Meatloaf had a 10 a.m. appointment. Jim was going to accompany him playing his songs. And I said to the woman at the desk, Jim Steinman is going to play for me. Do you have an appointment? No. Do you have an agent? No. And she went, do you see all these people here, as many as are here in this room? They all have agents. They all have an appointment, and they're not going to get to be seen. All right, you can sit down. We'll try to get you in, but I'm sorry, I can't give you a slot. 9 p.m., they asked me into the room. And Jim Steinman, bless him, stayed because he would take a piano room and compose music for hours. We went in and I did I Am Dog, and we did I'm Having Your Baby, You're a Creep, You're a Coward, and I Wish That I'd Never Known You.
Paul Anka.
All the, taking a woman's view of the Paul Anka song. And Chevy Chase fell off his chair laughing. And Ann Beats followed me out of the room. They said, do everything. What else have you got? And I did 2 songs and I did 3 monologues. And they said, thank you. So 10 p.m. I walk out of the room, and Lauren follows me and says, you got to come to my office tomorrow, first thing in the morning. I'll be there at 10 a.m. And I walked in and he was with Chevy, and Chevy was just a writer. And I went, you're just a writer? I said, Lauren, he was the funniest thing in the National Lampoon Lemmings. And Chevy looked at Lauren and went, see? And Chevy got a slot in the cast. But Lauren sent me down to this other guy, and I performed for this other guy in his office. And he said, you're very funny. Duh. And I was cocky. I didn't say that. And he went, all right, Lauren and I will talk. And I had to go back. I had a Lampoon gig in one of the places in New York State. And I had to get back in a car and go there for the show. And Lauren said, I'll call you before you have to leave. And I waited till 1 a.m. And that's when Lauren called, and he went, I'm sorry, but they said they need a piece of white bread for the not ready for primetime players. So it's going to be Jane Curtin. And I knew she had done an improv show in Boston, and she was heavy, what do you call it? Competition. And he said, but very telling. You told me that you're in a relationship with that guy that you're on the Lampoon tour with already. So maybe that's what's supposed to happen. So I don't know if I've thanked Lauren for that, but he was right. And I have a marriage and children because Lauren was right.
A door closes, but another door opens.
Yeah,
I guess
how
that's
they
the way
say
to
it.
do it. It's funny because when I read this for the second time, by the way, this, by the way, is a signed first edition.
That first edition.
I'm
Oh,
never
golly,
going,
sure
I'm never
that's
going to
nice.
part with it. But anyway, in reading it the second time, I was struck by how how insanely difficult having a theater career, a successful theater career
Yeah.
is. The technical aspects of it, the emotions, the cruelty,
Yeah,
cruelty. How did you get through it all? I mean, how did you do it? I mean,
Yeah.
it was
yeah. I often think I had a certain joy. I had a childhood of great joy. I'm a big believer in human development and psychology, and been in a lot of therapy, and just to explore how I do that.
mhm.
And I'm going to tell this story. Okay. In the first year of life, the child and the mother are mirroring, right? So, but in the post-World War II era, those men came home from the war and they started to have babies with my people, Catholic people who just had them, as many as they could. And I think I was born in 48, September. In February of 49, my parents, my father's brother and his wife, my father's cousin and his wife, and Aunt Betty Whaley, who is the mother-in-law of Pat Whaley sitting here, all decided to go on a cruise to South America and rumba the night away because they wanted to revive their marriage, what they had before the war, and the rumba ba, and let's go. They had either 2 or 3 children, each of them by then in the house. And all 3 cousins, myself, Kathy Mangan, and Sally Kennedy, had been born within 3 weeks of each other in September and October. So they left us in a playpen. There's a picture of the 3 of us flat on our backs. And there were twin toddlers, age 2, my sister, age 5, and my brother, age 3, all walking around the house, and one woman taking care of all of them. And I do think to this day that I spent 10 days on my little 6-month-old back going, I have died. I thought I was coming to Earth and it was going to be fun, but this sucks. What happened? I don't exist. I know that's true. So I rebuilt. It all turned out fine. It all came back. As Bob Dylan says, you can always come back, but you can't come back all the way. So I came back as someone who goes, it's all fine. I'm protected. I'm happy. And I want to be seen. I don't want to lose that mirror ever again. And so, no question, I was going to do this until, of course, now. At my age, but I'm talking about my book to all of you.
Mhm.
And I love now telling my stories. And even I'm going to do some fiction that's not about me, the actress. I will do that again, acting and activism. The name Kennedy fated me to walk into politics in a way my Republican parents, I don't think, ever envisioned. But your Democratic mother certainly might have.
You did. Now, by the way, Tyler, how are we doing?
Good. We got 15 minutes.
Oh,
Okay.
good.
I'm going to go back to the book again because in reading again, there was a wealth of names. It's a who's who of people from show business to
Yeah.
theater. And I'm going to ask you to call to mind who among this group had the greatest impact on you, either negative or positive. Drop a few names.
Okay.
We'd love to.
From this book, Sid Caesar,
Okay.
one of the funniest
Fair
men
enough.
ever. And I got that role as part of a transaction with an older man agent that I didn't know enough. Again, lamb to the slaughter. I was in a relationship. And he was, but anyway, he was also Sid Caesar's agent, and he knew this part was open. And at the end of the summer, I was almost going to be fired several times, with good reason, I'm sure. We played Rochester, New York. Yeah, you saw it. Was I good? How was I? And the reviewers were always kind to me. And I remember overhearing Jill O'Hara go, Cowtown reviews. So, that's the kind of
Yeah.
that's the kind of, and she wasn't a horrible person. It's just these were things, and I probably deserved half of that. At the end, Sid took the cigar out of his mother. Mimi, go to acting school. And I did.
You did.
And I had had acting lessons before going on. At first I went to Stella Adler and she was very bad for me. And then I went to Kurt Dempster and my fellow Paula Marchese, actress, is here. You were in that class and you did some of the best acting I'd ever seen in my life. And I thought, if I can be as good as Paula on stage and Kurt can teach me how, I'll be fine. In fact, that's the truth. Yeah.
Okay. My last question is, we are here in Writers and Books. It's the nerve center of the Rochester literary scene. And I want to talk about your writing. You are a writer.
Mhm.
You're a very good writer. And it got you in the door with Tammy Grimes.
Yes.
Remember that?
Yeah.
Age 12. And also I guess an author. I know that you've written screenplays, you've written songs, and you've written books. What are your plans? What are you what are you doing now, and what are your plans for the future? I'd love to hear.
Well, I drove into Rochester 30 maybe years ago now, on a rainy day, and I had the sense that poison was circulating from underground chemicals, and it was in the air and it was dripping from the leaves. And I just thought, I have to do something about that. And a whole novel bloomed in my head using many of the people in this room as somewhat templates, not complete templates at all. I have put everything into a very big 19th century style novel. And its first iteration 20 years ago, I think I sent it around to some places, but my own review of it was Mimi Kennedy has overwritten a very good book. And I am now polishing it. I have understood something about writing, and I do think it will come out someday. And it's about Rochester, fictionalized as Genesee, New York. And it's got race and love and a trio of women and their choices in life and things that happen that are not their choices in life. And it's from 67 to 88. And it starts getting ready for a debutante ball at the Valley Club, the Symphony Ball. Do you remember, some of you? And they are all debutantes at a symphony ball presented by their fathers. One girl has lost her father, so she's got the congressman based on Frank Horton. Who remembers Frank Horton? And I think Frank Horton's in a DUI at one point, was he not? Yes, he was. And that figures in the book. It's all what I remembered. Difficult births, premature births, bad diagnoses, love affairs, and yeah, I wanted to say something beautiful and transformational. And that's what drives it. And that's my bucket list. That's gonna happen. Thank you for asking.
Thank you.
I'll be
Now,
back
I'm gonna-
for that.
We have about 10 minutes or so or more for people if they want to ask any questions. Yes.
First of all, I was hoping for photos but I want to know, where's this so-called Christian neighborhood in Rochester that you grew up in? Oh, the Catholic neighborhood. Browncroft. Browncroft. Yeah, St. John the Evangelist. Yeah. St. John the Evangelist Parish. We walked to school down Winton Road, down Humboldt Street. That church is still there. I think the school may still be.
No.
Okay. All right. So I've been by it a lot, but I don't know the inner workings. Fabulous. I love Browncroft. We would go and walk in this creek that was down Pulver Boulevard, somewhere, the Dug Way. Anyway, we would walk in it and it was brown red water. That figures in the novel. It was probably polluted up the wazoo. No, that library up by the railroad tracks. My father used to walk there at night after dinner and sometimes take me. And it must have been very early because the children's thing was still, I would just be free to go upstairs from age 6 and go through the children's stacks. I loved that. Loved that. Yeah.
Any other questions? Yes.
You said that there was this bohemian influence in your life.
did that help you develop the character for Dharma's mother? That is based on my own hippie experience. By the time I got to Smith College, all bets were off. I mean, it was mercy, and I still have my valedictory address. We are the ones who will not be told that we cannot change the world.
Right on.
So, and then I got there. I had never even smoked marijuana until my junior year abroad in London, and there were a bunch of Tufts University theater students, the men. I'd never been educated with men, but there were a lot of hippie men, and they were political and cool. And I walked into their the room of all the other kids one night, and it was, and I was like, "What's going on?" And they were, "Well, yeah, try this," and I'm like, "Huh? Okay. What do I do? Oh, smoke." Oh, I don't feel anything. And they went, "Uh-huh." 15 minutes later, I'm laughing until I'm crying, and everybody's looking at me like this. Released the inner Mimi Kennedy. So I came home and I got very political. Kent State happened. I helped lead the theater part of the national moratorium. I had a boyfriend by then, and I was living in sin. And all kinds of things happened that are in this book. But Abby was me hippie. I learned how to Reiki, Reiki. And at the audition with Jenna for Chuck Lorre, which was my callback, I said, I'd like to do this. Jenna, you want to sit between, I'm going to give you a Reiki while we do this scene. And it blew everybody's mind. And they just went, okay.
Another question?
In Midnight in Paris, your character is so 180-degree opposite of you. Could you just talk about that?
I love to play the woman you love to hate. And I did it on a TV show called Homefront as well. And it involved some of the sorts of accents that I would hear, growing up, women who they didn't speak like Rochester as much as they would do this. So I was Rachel McAdams' mother, and Rachel was saying, I don't know what I'm doing. It turns out nobody in a Woody Allen movie ever knows what they're doing. We had dinner together. He never, encouraged that, but we did. And we all thought we were going to be fired, even Owen Wilson, because nobody got any direction. He just said, I trust your aesthetic, and you would do it. So Rachel said, Woody told her, just play rich. And I used to say that when I played rich, I did a thing called Long Island Lockjaw, as if you're holding all your money in your mouth, and it will spill out if you open your jaw too wide.
Any other questions? I have a question for you.
Yeah.
The stereotypical vision of a great artist or someone, in theater or whatever, is they had a tortured
Drinking habit.
childhood. No, a tortured, unhappy childhood. It was miserable. I mean, you had a normal childhood.
After the
I know.
6-month-old
Yes,
that
right,
experience.
And then also within show business, it wasn't uncommon for people to, have 4, 5, 6 or more spouses.
Yes.
At any one time. In fact, your cousin Ruth.
I mentioned
Mark, yes.
They regard
She had no less
recreational.
than 6 with 5 men.
Did she have 6?
Yes. And you have been happily married for almost 60 years. What is wrong with you? How could you do such a thing and be successful?
Well, that's a long story, but I have the right guy, and we were matched by a computer in 1966, the first computer dating program in the United States. There have been 2 books written about it that came in the last 2 years. We're in both of those books, Operation Match. But we didn't get together in college when we got each other's names. It took several years later in New York. So AI, if you will, matched us with 100 multiple choice questions that we somehow got matched up together. And I can remember, we joke about it a lot. And the other thing is you're very even-tempered, Larry, and that helps.
Don't
Every
forget
boy,
this morning.
What?
Don't forget the argument we had this morning.
We've never stopped arguing. And it's a good teacher about everything. I don't know. It's just clearly there's more going on in the universe about what we're doing and what we prefer and what we accept and what we don't. The 12 steps, you know, my latest role on Mom, the Serenity Prayer is my inheritance from that role. And it is my ballast now. Things I can't control, wisdom to know the difference, and changing the things I can. And that is not only lifelong occupation, I believe it's the one thing that comes with us. Those improvements that we make are not lost. So I feel like I'm preparing for the whatever happens next. And nothing is lost. And I knew I wanted to be an actress in this life. I just had to be. And I think that's the gift of being unmirrored for 10 days when you're a baby.
Mimi, thank you very much.